The federal government has said the resettlement city project in Zamfara State has reached an advanced stage of completion. The Federal Commission and National Commissions for Refugee, Migrant, and Internally Displaced Persons, Imam Ibrahim, made the disclosure during a visit to IDPs at the Tsunami community in Gusau. Trust TV Adamu Silas reports that the project is aimed at resolving settlement issues of the IDPs in Zamfara State. Please take a look.
Tsunami community, a suburb of Gusau metropolis, is home to thousands of internally displaced persons who have been sacked from their various communities by terrorists. Their homes, farms, food and other properties all destroyed. It is against these and other issues that the IDPs are appealing to the government to assist them with food, shelter and clothing in order to reduce their hardship.
The government of President Muhammadu Buhari has done a lot to intervene and provide succor for internally displaced persons as well as refugees in Nigeria. You can clearly see that some changes have occurred here. The schools that have been built, the health facility where we are in right now with this great number of women, and of course the new resettlement city that is coming up that is 95% completed. These are all efforts to help them resettle, to help them live a normal and more productive life and contribute their own quota to nation building.
The federal commissioner who visited the IDPs said the federal government is making efforts to elevate their plight and put smiles on their faces, adding that the ongoing construction of the resettlement city project has reached 90% completion. In no time, the federal government will resettle the IDPs in the state.
In the tsunami camp are victims of natural disaster. So, you know, when these things happen due to global warming, they lose their livelihoods and they lose their homes. So they've been here for a while. We're collaborating with the Zamfara state government to see that we kind of build the resilience within this camp to help them with their coping mechanisms, so that for people that wish to go back home later, when the place is built up, they can go back. But people who wish to make a new life here are able to do so. So we're going to bring in services here. We'll kind of refurbish this hospital that we're in. We'll increase capacity of the school. We'll put in some lights, you know, make sure that it's conducive for them to start a new life.
The commissioner further said the federal government will also upgrade the tsunami IDPs with basic facilities like hospital, school, borehole, among others, so as to make it habitable.
Well, that's a wrap on the news headlines and reports for this hour. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll take a look at our first topic of the day right here on Daybreak. Stay with us.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's Daybreak on Trust Television. We are moving into our first discussion proper, and it is one I'm sure that resonates with just about every household in Nigeria under the current circumstance. The national grid has once again experienced a system failure, resulting in nationwide blackout every now and then. According to the Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, the development was responsible for the current power outage being experienced. The disruption marked the 17th time the grid would collapse in 2022. AEDC, through its verified Facebook page on Sunday night, appealed to its Abuja customers and those within its areas of operation for understanding, as concerned authorities were working tirelessly to restore power supply. Joining us to discuss this issue is Barrister Bode Fadikbe. I hope I got that pronunciation correctly.
Fantastic.
The CEO of Sage Consulting and Communications. We welcome you to the studio this morning, especially for finding time away from the Temple of Justice to the Temple of Popular Opinion.
Yes, thank you very much.
To share with us thoughts and perspective on what appears to be an endless collapse and with no respite in sight for the average Nigerian. As far as I'm concerned, today for me to have light is actually what I don't expect. The norm for me is to always arrive home and see that there's no light.
Welcome by darkness.
What exactly is this whole concept of system collapse? What's happening? Is it that it is taking too much, it can no longer take, or facilities have become obsolete, or we have people who just don't understand what they should be doing, mining this? Why this incessant, endless collapse of the grid?
Thank you very much for having me. Interestingly enough, I don't think the major issue is obsolescence of equipment, strictly speaking. What we have seen consistently is a position by the GENCOs advancing the argument that it's going to be a little bit difficult for us to move beyond where we are now, principally because of structural issues. Would it even be correct to say structural issues? Now, what I'm trying to drive out is this. For the GENCOs, they are supposed to have a contractual agreement that is to help them ramp up the availability at every point in time in terms of what they can generate. This goes back to almost 10 years ago, because by next year, privatization will be 10. So we are in the 9th year now. At the inception, or before the privatized entities and concessioned entities were handed over to private investors, there were a series of agreements.
That's right.
Conversations took place. Of course, like a man who is looking for a wife, you will have a lot of conversation with a woman. Everyone will try to allay his or her fears about, okay, look, this person is a stranger to me. This person, yes, we may have courted for about 6 months, we may have courted for about a year, but there is still some strangeness that is attached to that kind of relation. So in order for everyone to be sure of where we are going to, so that you don't react at whims and caprices, let's document everything that we need to do. So documentations took place. And the GENCO said, we can provide this. Maybe about 13,000 megawatts. The transmission said, we can carry this, because they are supposed to be the wheelers. They are supposed to be the wheeling company. And DISCO said, this is the amount we can carry. Okay. Having had that conversation, according to the GENCOs, they now went sourcing for funds to make sure that that capacity that they agreed to provide, they did provide. They maintained their stations and did everything that they needed to do. If you study very well, you will see that at the beginning of privatization, availability in the grid was a little bit more stable. Not just more stable, it was even attractive. And we were on the path of saying that if we continue along this trajectory, we're likely to get to the point where we can begin to talk about some level of stability and then build it up far much more than what we have got into. But somewhere along the line, the usual Nigerian magic began to happen. And then agreements were no longer as respected as they ought to be. I've gone to the bank to take facilities, or not, maybe not the bank, but funding institutions, facility providing institutions. And I've entered into an agreement to say, as my money comes, because your cash flow is supposed to be one of the factors that will be considered for you to receive a facility. As my money comes, I will begin to fund and things like that. And then problems began along the line. Of course, the man who had thought that there would be a smooth relationship also began to renege. If this is what is going to be available to me, therefore, I may not be able to provide more than this quantity. Since those who are supposed to take it are no longer taking it. So what is it? I have the ability, I have the capacity to do this amount, but Electricity is not something you can store and say, if they don't come today, they will come tomorrow. I mean, it's something that you, as we are talking now, whatever is being generated now is being consumed now. Now, talking about the incessant collapse of the grid, collapse will come from, forgive me, I'm a lawyer, I'm not an engineer, but at least from relationships with them, one has come to understand that collapse will come as a result of one or two factors. But putting it simply, either too many people are chasing what is available and it's not enough, or what is available is more than what people want to take. Okay. What am I trying to talk about? You have 10,000 people who want to take 1 megawatt. You know that it's impossible for that 1 megawatt to serve. So the system will respond. In Nigeria, we are always at 50 heads. Is it that if it goes above that, there will be trouble in the grid. If it comes below that, there will be trouble in the grid. Apart from the issue of deliberate sabotage of the grid itself, in terms of vandals attacking the grid. I remember about 2 or 3 days ago, the Honorable Minister of Power said that one of the problems that is causing the grid to be unstable is the tendencies of terrorists. Well, that's a different conversation entirely. I also remember very clearly that at a point in time we associated it with maintenance culture. Suddenly all our power stations are being maintained at the same time. And I asked, what is the wisdom in that kind of thing? You have 4 cars and you take all the 4 cars to the mechanic at the same time. How do you rationalize that kind of thinking? For a country that is over 50, 60 years, for people who are not, even young boys on the street, even university students today, unless you are outrightly indolent, that's when you will say you will start reading 2 days to exam and you bring all your courses to your reading room in 1 day. You will collapse and die.
So recipe for disaster. Without breaking you, I would like us to make a bit more sense of this.
Yes.
When we saw the telecom, with the opening up of the telecom sector, or the liberalization of the telecom sector, we saw a model that allow investors put infrastructure on the ground and followed up through to the final delivery to you, the retail consumer. You probably only had to buy a handset and connect to the infrastructure. So they managed the provision of infrastructure, the provision of service, and also the taking of whatever kind of rent they stipulated for the service they offer. Why was it impossible to replicate that model and allow people? Because what I understand from your explanation is some persons are in the business of investing and generating power.
Yeah.
Others are in the business of delivering this power to household and taking money from them and then coming back to say whatever we have recovered is not enough to pay for whatever you had given us. And that's a major headache. Because they will have to generate, take care of themselves, and remit whatever is left to the people who had invested in the generation. Why was it impossible to have allowed people generate, transmit, and take their money themselves?
Now, what I understand by that expression is you're asking us to go back to National Electric Power Authority.
But would that be such a bad thing? Because I think we didn't have much of these problems when it was.
It's a matter of where you stand in the divide. I know that a cross section of opinion, but let me I'll get back to this if enough time is available. Let's even come back to the linear comparison that you seem to have done with power and telco. Now, business models are usually not too different from themselves. They could have customized peculiarities. I mean, there is a need, somebody is meeting the need, and there is recovery so that you can continue to meet the need. That's how simple I want to put business models. But you see, with the power sector, there are certain peculiarities that further create challenges for them compared to the telcos. One is that for the telcos, their product is 100% almost 100% protected. What am I trying to say? For those who will remember very well, when telecommunication was liberalized in this country, some funny guys tried to do something. All of us will load the number at the same time and press enter, thinking that more than one person can use
one card.
Now, of course, that was not possible. But with the power sector, it is so porous at certain voltage level that anybody can enter into it and exit at will. So, for the money receivable by the telcos, they can be sure of about 90 to 99% of recovery, allowing about 1% loss here and there. That's not the same thing with the power sector. For the power sector, there is a big elephant in the house that is called ATC&C, Aggregate Technical, Commercial and Collection Losses. For the technical, it means your lines, how good are they? Because they will impact either negatively or positively on your collection and commercial losses. For collection, how easy is it for you to go to the next village to collect the money? Is the road good? Do you have vehicles? For commercial part of it, are you putting the customer on the right tariff class? That's a different conversation entirely. So coming back to the issue of the power sector, the players in the power sector, you find out that all of these constitute a major challenge for them. But in terms of whether one person can do the three, of course, that was what, let's even backtrack a little bit. In the ECN and Niger Dams Authority days, what we have now was what we had then. ECN was the Electricity Corporation of Nigeria, for those who are old enough to know. That was what ECN was. And it was dealing essentially with the lines. But Niger Dams Authority was dealing essentially with the power stations, the GENCOs. So what you call GENCOs then was what Dam Authority was doing there. And of course, there was always this brickbat, blame game, back and forth. Oh no, it's because you didn't generate enough, that's why I couldn't provide for the customers. And then government, through the during the Gowon administration, merged the two of them to say National Electric Power Authority, and merged the two of them in 1972. Now, over a period of time, we also saw that it got to its own place of perfect performance, and then began to deteriorate, like every other institution that suffers that kind of thing. If there is no deliberate attempt to redefine, rediscover that institution. Look at what Daily Trust is doing today. When I got to Abuja, Daily Trust was just on newspaper alone. Today, Daily Trust has revolutionized and is going ahead to say that it's going to be a one-stop shop where you get digital, you get radio, you get television, and you get the print. So anyone you want to, and I'm sure that in your research and development department, somebody is thinking again, what other new product can we bring into this business of communication, because it's so huge. Did we have that kind of situation in those days? If we had it, what happened? How did they get to the point where government then said, we need to privatize? Again, that's another conversation. Because I remember very clearly that the gentleman who wanted to contest for PDP, I hope I am right, for PDP presidential candidate, Issa Hayatu. Hayatu, yes. I think he was the chairman of the National Council for Privatization and Commercialization during the Babangida period. And one of the entities that was listed for privatization or commercialization was National Electric Power Authority. Obviously, because as at that time, government said, and you remember the structural adjustment program, government said, we don't have enough money to do all of this funding. Let's sell some of these assets so that we can concentrate on some very critical ones, health, security, that is a national asset, and all of those. Unfortunately, our security is something else today. I mean, let's not even go. But there was this big problem. It was the problem of this big behemoth. It seemed to have become too big that what we can do to bring about efficiency is break it down into smaller units. Now we have broken it down into smaller units. Guess what? There are those, like the gentleman on my left-hand side said, who feel that it's better we go back to yesterday rather than continue. There is a saying in my place, there's a particular god, the god of iron. Say, if you cannot save me, leave me the way you met me.
Ajodabile and another one.
Okay, fine. Now, Ogumbo Badegbe Mishemi Bo Shebami, I hope there will be so many people there who will understand. Now, if privatization cannot save us, can it leave us where it met us? I remember a very vocal voice in the power sector was doing an analysis last week on another station, and she said she was propounding this dead horse theory, or the metaphor of the dead horse theory, and it was that, look, this horse is dead. No matter the amount of medical attention it receives, the horse is dead. We need a miracle worker to bring this horse back to life. I'm not aware whether there is a miracle worker right now that is going to bring this horse back to life. So if you say one person should do the three, what you are saying is that we should go back to NEPA days. That's exactly what I understand you to be saying.
So, before Ibrahim comes in, some other school of thought have expressed worry about the whole concept of a national grid.
Yes.
You know, talking about the dead horse and all. You are very knowledgeable in these things. You are also, I presume, widely traveled. How else do they do it in other climes that have become impossible? I mean, I will share a joke with you about Professor Patu Tomi flying in from a West African country with another colleague. And the colleague said to him, Pat, which is what I'm saying to you, what exactly is your problem? Is it that you don't know where the generating plant are sold? Or you can't find the experts to do these things? Or you just don't have the money to procure them? If the national grid policy has failed us, as with the metaphor of the dead horse, what is happening to enabling embedded generation, just to create a mix so that I don't sit in a place where I can harvest sufficient sun to provide electricity, and I have to wait for a national grid from somewhere that has to feed into Benin or Abeokuta before power returns to my domain. Because I saw a report recently, and we said we have captive power to the tune of about 40,000 megawatts. Generators scattered here and there, they are not able to evacuate, all because of the whole national grid concept. What can we do about that?
No, it's very sad, because in my head, what is playing out in your analysis is human factor. That's what is playing out in my head. I mean, not just because it's playing out, but because I had seen it at work quite frequently. I think about last week or 2 weeks ago, the MD of AEDC was saying that, okay, look, we, in an attempt to satisfy customers, we have designed 40 projects, and those projects, some of them I'm sure will come through embedded generation. Now, that is beginning to look like the direction people are going towards. I remember when I was in AEDC, Wuse Market was considered for that kind of that kind of facility, a hybrid. In other words, embedded generation, and then you can also get supply from the grid, so that in the unlikely event that the grid is out, or let me not say unlikely, in the likely event, because it's more frequent now, so it's not unlikely.
That's right.
In the likely event that the grid goes out, you can fall back immediately. Now, the painful part of it is, where have we kept our brains all these years, such that we have allowed things to degenerate so far to this point that it is only now that we are beginning to realize that we can talk of alternative solutions. Because the pressure on the grid today is so enormous. I think as at this morning, I was getting a conversation around 3,700 for, let's even say, the whole 200 million Nigerians are not taking electricity at the same time, because in most homes you have 3 or 4 or 5 children, husband and wife, so all of them are using it there at the same time. Let's even assume that 50 million people need electricity immediately. South Africa, that is not up to 50 million people, their installed capacity is about 40,000 megawatts. not to talk of a country of over 200 million people. So where did we keep our brain all these years? So it must mean that the problem is not in the policy. The problem is in the people who are doing the implementation. I remember again, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, somebody saying that, oh, look, let's look at the let's look in the direction of the regulator. To what extent is the regulator regulating? Because this is the principal person that is supposed to stand on your neck and say, if you don't implement to the letter the terms and conditions contained in the power purchase agreement or contractual agreement that we have had, these are the consequences, because we cannot continue like this, for God's sake. So for me, what is playing out is that human factor has become so endemic and prevalent that there is just nothing we need to do again other than to really look at the people who are working there. Particularly at policy design and policy implementation points. What exactly? Because it cannot be that we don't have enough going into the policy proposal. I mean, look at NYSC. Since when it was created, for me, looking around this country, that's about the only policy that has survived all our shenanigans in this country. When it became necessary to say, it's not just anybody that is a graduate that should go for NYSC, we dropped that one and said, once you are about this age, you won't go again. Initially, it included those who had NCE. I remember very clearly. Then after some time, they said, no, NCE should not go, it should be graduates alone. When certain things happened, we said, no, when you get to this age, don't do it again, ask for exemption. And then we now have a batch A stream, this stream, that. Why can't we modify so much that we can get to the point where we can say yes? Unfortunately, the global energy crisis is catching up with us. Nigerians want electricity. They are not finding electricity there. Petrol is not available. I know how many hours we spend on the queue. Some even sleep in the petrol station overnight. You want to use gas to boil water or to do some other things in the house. There's problem So exactly when are we going to come out of this negative circle?
Well, exactly when? That is a question that we always ask. And this is a very interesting conversation. We hope we have the time to actually expand into other sectors as well. But we do appreciate you coming on the program, Barrister Bode. It's been a pleasure having you. And all those insights you actually provided were eye-opening.
Thank you very much.